Welcome to Friends with Fertility, the podcast where we dive deep into the world of fertility, reproductive health, and all the emotional journeys that are in between. I'm your host, Elizabeth King, a fertility expert dedicated to providing you with the knowledge, support, and inspiration you need on your path to parenthood. Whether you're just starting out, exploring your options, or looking for solidarity and advice, we are here for you. Let's embark on this journey together and turn uncertainty into empowerment and make friends with fertility. Let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome back to Friends with Fertility. Today we have Dr. Jaime Knopman.
Yep.
Knopman. Welcome, Jaime. Thanks for being here. I will get into her bio, which is extraordinary. She is a board-certified reproductive endocrinologist with years of experience in IVF treatment, IUI, PCOS treatment, gestational surrogacy, and many other areas. She serves as the Director of Fertility Preservation for CCRM New York. After graduating with honors from the University of Pennsylvania, she received her medical degree from Mount Sinai, where she was elected as the AOA Honor Society. Honestly, No, it's not. I mean, it's amazing. I have this full to show everybody. Yeah. It's so impressive, and so impressive that I'm going to have to just put it in the show notes because it really, I don't even want to do the podcast. I just want to read through this and say, okay, tell me about that. What was that? Let's hear about all this stuff. All to say, she's very well educated and knows her stuff. So how did you get down the path of reproductive endocrinology?
Yeah. So I say this is sort of a little trite, but I knew I wanted to be a doctor since I was in the second grade. I read a book about Elizabeth Blackwell, the first female physician, and I was like, that's what I'm going to do. I went to college. I graduated from college. I took a gap year where I worked at Memorial Sloan Kettering in their breast cancer center. And I was pretty convinced that I wanted to do breast surgery, help women who had cancer remove tumors. And then when I got to med school, I realized that what I really loved was women's health. So I thought the best pathway for that was actually OB-GYN. Mm-hmm. And then once in my OB-GYN residency, I really, really loved hormones. I thought they were fascinating. And that led me to reproductive endocrine.
Well, that makes sense. And what a long path since second grade.
Yeah, it's been a lot of years. I'm pretty linear.
That's amazing. And so also part of what you work with is the Chick Mission, which I love. And I've had them on years ago, and it's near and dear to my heart because my sister is somebody who had gone through cancer. And back then that wasn't an option to do and the type of cancer she had. But tell us a little bit about that for people that are listening that aren't familiar.
Yeah, the Chick Mission is a fantastic organization. I am I'm so impressed by Amanda Rice, who started Chick Mission. She's a 3-time cancer survivor, and she started it because she saw a big gap in the space. She was diagnosed with breast cancer, wanted to freeze her eggs, had insurance benefits, and was told, you're not infertile yet. And she said, well, I'm going to be infertile after chemo. And they said, all right, then call us then. So she did not like that answer, which is what makes her so amazing. And she started this organization where we now provide grants to women who are about to undergo treatment that will render them infertile. And that is her mission. And we've given hundreds upon hundreds of grants to so many women. And I really think we have changed, we've changed the trajectory of so many women's lives.
Truly. And I think it's not something that people automatically go to think about when they are placed with that diagnosis. So I think stating it again for somebody who's listening, if they have a friend or a family member who's going through it, when you find that window of opening to suggest to look into it and or to ask their doctor about it, because not every doctor comes straight out and says this is something you should look into straight after diagnosis. But I would highly recommend having those conversations sooner rather than later during that period, even though it is a really tough thing to get your head around altogether. But so I just wanted to touch on that quickly before we get into the rest of it. In your practice right now, what are you seeing a trend
Yeah.
specifically in?
It's funny, I get asked this a lot. So I said I used to call myself an infertility doctor, and now I frequently tell people I'm a fertility doctor because most of my time is now spent helping women and couples preserve their fertility rather than simply treat their infertility. So we're seeing so many more women come in to freeze their eggs at younger and younger ages, which I find exciting because the success rates on the back end when you thaw those eggs are so much better. So we are really, really getting the word out and we're seeing a big difference. We are seeing that the success rates are so much better because when women freeze, they're younger. The quality and quantity of their eggs is higher. And therefore, when they thaw them, they're going to have a lot more mileage out of those eggs.
Do you think that there's any age that is too young to be freezing eggs?
That is a great question. I wrote an article for Oprah, which I definitely got a lot of negative backlash for, that said I'm going to freeze my daughter's eggs when they're 22. And listen, I will sit here and listen to all the, complainers, haters all day long. But the point is I think the younger we do it, now I don't think we should do it in our teenage years, right? I'm not advocating that. But I do think our 20s is probably the ideal time to do it because that's when we'll get our best crop of eggs.
Now, as far as the thawing and then fertilizing after the fact, do you think that people are educated well enough about that whole process now, or do you think that still has a way? Because I know when I did it, which was quite a while ago, that wasn't a conversation to be had. It was
Yeah.
like, okay, great, done.
I think it depends, right? I think, listen, not every fertility clinic, fertility doctor is probably created equal, right? So sometimes some people talk about more about it, less about it. I base my recommendations upon the patient's like desires in the future, right? If somebody's telling me I'm going to want 5 kids and I don't want to start until I'm 38 and they get 8 eggs, I need to have them do that several more times, right?
Right,
So it really depends on the patient where they're standing now and where they will be in the future.
right. I also think you may say five then, right? And then once you get into it, you're like, oh, maybe one
Yeah.
or two is good.
I know. When
But
people
you
say
don't
to me, I
know.
want 5 kids, I'm like, oh, I have two. And I don't know, that may be a lot. Right. I mean, I think we all sort of have we have these images of what we think our life is going to be. Right. We were talking about second grade when I was 8 years old. Like, I was like, I will do this. And a lot of times it doesn't work out like that. But we, as fertility doctors, or those of us that do a lot of fertility preservation, we want to make those dreams as close to possible as we can. Right. So if you don't start to try and have children until you're in your mid to late 30s, you may very well have infertility, and your dream of having a genetic child may be compromised if you don't freeze eggs before.
Now, what about for boys? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm a mom of 3 boys, and I feel like my life is talked about eggs and egg
Yeah.
preservation. But now, in the back of my mind, I'm always thinking, okay, like, well, what about them? Like, it's not
Yeah,
something
no, it's
that
a good question.
isn't.
I'm from the land of girls. I only have daughters. But yes, sperm declines in quality and quantity for men as well. But the line in the sand for advanced paternal age is much more murky than advanced maternal age. And men are going to produce sperm for most of their life. So if I had a son, of course I would say to him, listen, like, you don't want to do anything that is going to compromise your sperm health, but would I run him in to freeze his sperm? Probably not. Unless he had a medical issue, had to remove a testicle or something of that nature.
Of course, yeah. I think also explaining to the boys at a younger age, also, in my opinion, of this could be happening to somebody that you date or marry or whatever, to be aware of that, not to push them along in any way. But I think, again, just having that conversation now is not now as in like their age right now, but generally now compared to when we were growing up, that conversation never would have happened, let alone with
And
a boy.
yeah, I mean,
Like it
that's
just
a
wasn't.
big part of the book, and a part of the message we're trying to get across is, the sex ed that I took, and that definitely my mom took. It's antiquated, right? We need to update it. Like, of course, I don't want my teenage daughters running around having unprotected intercourse, but what I do want them to know is that it's actually pretty hard to get pregnant, right? And I don't think we've made that message clear to them, so that every woman that I see who sits here at 40 years old and is shocked when I say it's very hard to get pregnant. They have no basis for that understanding because we haven't taught it to them. So we need to re-educate them so that they are aware.
100%. I mean, even as a healthy 22-year-old to get pregnant, like the percentage of that, it's quite a miracle to when it
Yep.
actually happens when
I
you
think
think
about that
about
all
all
the
the
time.
things.
I'm like, wow, it is really, really hard to get pregnant.
Yeah. So back to preservation and IVF, for example, what do you think the best case scenario is for people when they're trying to find a clinic? I mean, I know for us, we usually recommend looking at the labs. Obviously,
Yeah.
you want to have a really great rapport and relationship with a doctor and the clinic as well, but the lab plays a big part. From your perspective, what's do you
Yeah.
think is
The
most
lab is the
important?
biggest player of the team. Listen, I have no ego. And I always say I am only as good as the men and women who stand in that lab behind me. Because if the lab is not up to par, it doesn't matter how much you like your doctor or how good they are at doctoring, your results are just not going to be great.
Right.
I always urge people to speak to their OB-GYNs because usually people in the field will know, right? Because we know the OBs know the REs know the OBs. Also to use websites like SART and Fertility IQ, you can find a lot of information about laboratories there.
Which I think is to do your own research is half the battle before you go into a clinic because you want to feel like knowledge is power. So the more information you have going into it. And now there's a lot of the websites like SART that will actually break it down by your age and
Yeah.
statistics and whatever. So it's not just anybody who walks into the clinics, their chances of getting pregnant are X. It's somebody who's 35 who has this or that or whatnot.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to ask the doctor those specific questions as well, because it matters, right? It's a big time investment, it's a big financial investment, and it's your future. So you want to
Yeah.
make sure that they're comfortable being part of a team and not just being said to.
Yeah.
I think that's another big thing that I've noticed with my patients over the years as well is they're so well educated. And it wasn't like when I walked into the doctor's office the first time where no matter what he said was the rule in the Bible and whatnot. Now it's like we're having these open conversations about what do you think about this? Should I
Yep.
try Lupron before I do that? And that never would have been a thing 20 years ago. So
I mean, I think I'm going to say this, and we're both women. I do think it's been the influx of women into medicine, and I'm not trying to sound like sexist, but I think
I
as
do too.
women we tend to check our egos more, and we're willing to like listen to everyone's approach. Like I ask the nurses, the medical assistants, like I always ask people's opinion because like I went to med school and I've trained here, but people that have been in this field, like we have nurses who've been here for 20 years, like they know so much.
Right.
And so I think women tend to be a bit more able to take advice and opinions. And I think we are a bit more empathetic. And so we listen and we digest better.
Agree. I kind of say probably more often than I should that the new generation of younger women coming into REs is much different than the guys that came before. No offense to them because they pioneered it all and we wouldn't
I
be
s-
here without them.
Completely. I say I
But
have so much respect for them because they
yeah,
trained us, they built this field, but we as women have transformed this field to be what it is today.
right. Also, my next point is that just to be more empathetic and again, being on the patient side as well, it was like, don't worry, it's not your fault, and walk out the back door. I feel like there's much more emotion behind the physicians now, the
Yep.
REs, to understand that there's a much bigger play as far as the mental state of a patient walking in versus, prior that, yes, your job and what you've been trained to do is this and this, but you also get that the amount of stress and what's happening as they walk in the door. How much do you think that plays a role in a patient's success of where their mental state is in the process?
I'm the daughter of a psychologist, so
Oh,
obviously I think
amazing.
everything is
Yeah, I
mental,
love it.
right? But I think it's important. I think having a support system, whether it be from your physician or the team at your physician's office, or a partner or friends, I think that's very important. These can be really hard journeys, and going through it alone, it's really I don't think it's really possible, right? So I do think who you have around you and how they can push you forward is very important.
And as an RE, are you openly suggesting that to patients, or are you kind of waiting for them to say where they're at?
I'm a huge fan of our social workers, reproductive health counselors. I'll always say, if you have a therapist, feel free to connect me to your therapist. If they want to talk about meds or what we can do to support you in the, post retrieval. Listen, I mean, I think a big part of our job, it's not even medicine as much as it is listening and talking to people and hearing what's going on in their lives and how we can, of course, we want to get them to build families, but how we can also help them where they are to get to that next step.
Right. Which I think is huge when you're looking for a doctor to understand that they get what you're going through, just to a small degree, even emotionally, and your partner or your husband or whoever is there supporting you. Like, it's not just you, it's both of you. And knowing that, I think, again, in the patient perspective, you're so like, okay, I finally got into the office, I'm on the table, we're like seeing what we can see, and you kind of forget about that emotional side of things for a moment because you're just trying to get the
Yep.
data right then and there, and then you walk out the door and you're like, fuck, or
Yeah.
whatever, like, what just happened?
Well, think about, I sometimes, a couple of things. Sometimes I'll ask a patient to I'll be like, I think your partner needs to join us next time. Because
Mm-hmm.
what we hear is different sometimes as a patient than what somebody else hears, right? So like
Right.
I had breast cancer. And I remember when going through treatment, like it was so helpful to have my husband there because I would leave and he'd be like, that is not what she said. I'm like, oh, really? It wasn't?
Right.
Because I'm in this hyper, hyper anxious state and I'm not processing it. So I think for patients having, even if they don't have a partner, but having like a parent or a friend or an aunt sit with them, it makes the experience, it makes the information more digestible. And I remember in the hospital as a resident, the patients who had people by their bedside recovered faster. Someone helped them get out of the bed. They walked them around the floor. They made them drink some apple juice, right? So, like having people by you, no matter who that person is, will help you get better faster.
I love that. That's such a good reminder too, right? Of like, it's for some reason, especially women, we think we got this, we can do it alone with
Oh,
like
yeah.
type A, we
Yeah.
can do this, but really it's like, you don't have to do it. It's just this small period of time, ask for help, in whatever way that looks like, and you will get to the other side faster. I almost guarantee that, just from what I've seen. What do you think is the biggest myth right now in fertility is?
Wow, I mean, I think a big one is always, and we hear this all the time. The pill made me infertile. The
Mm,
pill caused my problems. I think the pill, honestly, it's like a mom. It gets a really bad rap. Every problem, your teenage kid is like, it's my mom's fault. That's like the pill. I think the pill really does a lot of benefit for women. And yes, it may mask fertility struggles because if you're on the pill, you won't know what's going on with your menstrual cycle. But I think that's a big one. I also think what we can test for in embryos, right? Like I've had patients come in more frequently now saying, can we choose height or eye color or, whatever. And we really can't do that, right? Genetic testing is good for selecting or removing aneuploidy or single gene mutations, but we can't craft a designer child for you.
right. I think that's been getting a lot of press lately, which is
Yeah.
interesting. I'm curious to know that people are actually bringing that up in
Oh, yeah.
appointments.
I've heard it
Wow.
several times now where I'm like, "What?
How
Okay."
about let's just get pregnant with a healthy baby and leave it at that?
Yeah, I think that's really it's hard, right? Like, I think
Yeah.
sometimes you sit here as a physician because 'cause you've seen so much loss or negative, and you're thinking to people, "Oh my goodness, like, I wish I could just sometimes shake you and be like, 'That's really what you want.'"
Right. Let's get some perspective here for a
Yeah.
minute.
Mhm.
What about surrogacy? Do you feel like that's becoming more mainstream, so to speak? I mean,
Well,
obviously the
definitely for us in New York, it was not
yes.
legal in New York until 2021, so we didn't see a lot of it. We certainly had patients come and make embryos and ship them to other places around the US, but now it's becoming much more common in New York because it's legal. But I think not nationwide, it's also much more common than it ever was.
I think so too, which is great because again, I
Yeah.
think people that need it, amen for that. And again, I think there's this misconception of, well, I'm just going to have somebody be a surrogate because I don't want to get fat. And unfortunately, that's
That drives me crazy because
Not
I
nice.
can't say that I've ever, like, I've been doing this a long time. I can count maybe one or two people who said to me, I just don't want to be pregnant. Most people are doing this because they cannot carry a pregnancy,
Right.
either medically or it's, a same sex couple that doesn't have a uterus. Like, it's very rarely, I just don't want to be fat and be pregnant.
Right. Right. Well, it's out there, unfortunately, which is
Yeah.
strange. But how can people find out more information about you and where you work and the work that you are doing? Because again, to your point and all of your articles that you've researched and whatnot, you have a lot going on. So how can
I do.
people?
It's very trying to manage all the schedules is a
I
lot. But
bet.
no, I work at a clinic called CCRM New York. CCRM is a national network of fertility clinics started in Colorado. And I recently wrote a book. Pub date is January 13th. Super exciting. It's less than a week away. It's called Own Your Fertility. I'm so excited to share it with the world. And I also have a Instagram page and a website at Dr. Jaime Knopman, and it's Jaime. I always laugh. My parents really did me in by spelling my name like that. People will be like, I emailed you, you never got back to me. I'm like, that's not how I spell my name. That's fine.
Uh, that's Tell us about your book real quick before we
Yeah.
jump off, because I want to hear more
My
about it.
book is about, it's not, people have said, is it just for women who want to get pregnant or just for those who want to freeze their eggs? It's all of it, right? It's almost like a manifesto. It's a relatable girlfriend's guide to everything fertility, infertility, and really the journey of fertility treatment. The last section, we call it the LFG section, or the in honor of Dory, just keep swimming section. The section that really deals with the mental toll that fertility and infertility treatment will take on patients. So it's a really good resource.
Awesome. I can't wait for it to come out and help support you get the word out on that.
Thank you so
And
much.
congratulations on your being on the other side of breast cancer. I'm sorry to hear
Oh,
that you had to
thank
go
you.
through that. I tell people all the time as well, though, that are going through their fertility, the Mayo Clinic study from 2013 about the stress of fertility being equated to a cancer patient. So if you're in it and you
100%.
feel like it's a lot, you're not imagining it. There have been studies done that have proven, yes, it is a lot. So get the help, talk to somebody, work with a physician that is open to hearing what you need to share, and know that you'll get through it. And your family may not be built the way you expected, but you'll get there.
I always say to patients, if you stay on the path to parenthood and you are accepting of all paths, you will be a parent, right? We have so many
100%.
ways to get there.
It's
You just
amazing.
have to be accepting of different varieties of a journey you maybe never imagined.
Right. And how cool is it that we live in a world that's possible? Like, it's
Yeah,
awesome.
completely.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for your time today. And until we meet again.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Friends with Fertility. We hope that you found the stories, insights, and tips as inspiring and informative as we did. Remember, you are not alone on this journey. Your friends with fertility are here for you. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to follow us on social media for updates and more fertility resources. Until next time, stay hopeful and keep believing in your journey, and know that we are sending you lots of love.